Benzies is a security engineer at TSS, but has been focused in security engineering for the last 7 years, working in large enterprise environments, consulting for local businesses, and now supporting managed security services for various customers. Ben is also responsible for hiding things around Canberra at the moment. So I wonder if he's going to talk about that today, but we'll see how we go. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you. How does this sound?
That's perfect.
Great. All right, let me just share my screen. How are we going? Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right, I'll get started. So thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Ian and Shanna, for moderating and organizing all of this. This has been one of the best online confs I've ever been to. It's also been the only online conf I've been to, but it's still the best. So now look, before I start in this, I wanted to give anyone here an opportunity to tune out if you've been affected by any online harassment or identity theft or stalking of anything like that. It's a good idea to tune out because there may be some things in here that could bring up some complex emotions for you. Additionally, if you do feel affected by this, please reach out to any of the health services out there that can help you through these complex times and complex emotions. They're there to help you, and you really should talk about it. It's really important to. So thank you, Ian. You've probably given most of that introduction there, but yes, I am Ben, aka Benzies online. I've been in IT for 14 years, ever since I was in year 12, actually, where I started an apprenticeship. All of my knowledge and experience has come from learning on the job or learning at home in my own time. And really that's how it's gotten me this far so far. Today I wanted to focus on a few things here, assuming most of you already know about OSINT. Maybe some of you who don't, but maybe some of you who are surprised to know, to find out how much you already know. But maybe some of you are here just to find out if there's anything new you can learn. So I want to cover off a quick introduction, how it all started for me and the things I've learned, the good, the bad, the ugly of OSINTing, and OSINTive, which is what Ian mentioned before about the whole OSINT and flags around town. So a little introduction here. OSINT, or Open Source Intelligent, in a nutshell, is any information source that you can gain publicly for free. And you can easily categorize these into two categories, which is that being online or offline. The options for OSINTing would include search engines such as Google, social media sites, Showdown, fitness tracking, web archives, government reports, job postings, geospatial, television, radio, newspapers, weather information, and more uncommonly, the dark web. So who might use this though? Well, anyone. And specifically to point this out, we've got volunteer communities, which we'll get into shortly, recruitment agencies and potential employers, private companies, pen testers before they do any sort of physical engagements, and of course, you would have guessed it already, governments. So for me, where did this all begin? I've got a little picture here to give you an idea of that. And yeah, it really did start this long ago, if anybody remembers MySpace. And am I right? You know, at the time, I was that guy asking for your ASL. And I totally tried to get my crush's Hotmail address so I could add them on MSN chat. And yeah, I definitely let randoms add me on MySpace, on MSN, just to thank them for it and have a little chat online. And the thing is, not much has changed since then, to be honest with you. I'm still adding people I don't know fully on LinkedIn. I'm liking my celebrity crushes on Facebook. And on Twitter, I'm still accepting people to follow me and talk to me online. And it's a bit of one of these moments, really. But make sure you wash your hands in these times and don't touch your face either. Because the reality about this is, even though I'm still haven't really changed too much, even though I have this knowledge behind me, the reality behind it is we want to feel connected with each other. We want to feel like we're a part of something. We want to feel wanted, and we just want to be involved. But as I developed my online presence, I started to develop new techniques for finding people, and I learned so much information about these people that I could start building reports on them. I could direct conversations before I met them, and even develop new skills such as social engineering, so I could gain more information from them. And at this point, you may be thinking, this is a little bit creepy, and you're right. You know, this is pretty creepy stuff. But really, I wanted to make you feel a little bit creeped out in this talk, because this isn't even the worst part of it. This is really just basic searching online. But it's these fine details that we're so oblivious to, they can give away so much about us. And something I like to say is a picture or a piece of information is worth 1,000 new sources. Now I wanted to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I've got a little picture here. A lot of you should know already. Clint Eastwood movie. Just wanted to point out here who the good guy actually is in this. But look, as creepy as I made that introduction, there is a lot of good that can come from OSINT. And this is specifically revolves around the volunteer community and community groups that are involved in this. There is a great not-for-profit organization out there that Ian actually mentioned yesterday called Trace Labs. Now, Trace Labs actually hosted the first ever OSINT CTF in Canada back in 2018, and held Australia's first OSINT CTF just last year, which I got to attend. And Trace Labs focuses specifically on missing people. So great. How would you do this? How would you get involved? How would you go about finding missing people? So here's a couple of tips of things that helped me along that journey. So a couple of obvious things. You're going to need a computer, and that could be anything really. That can be your laptop, your home computer, and even your phone. Anything that is able to capture information is useful in this circumstance. You are going to need an operating system. Yes, it's obvious, and some way of note taking again. And it's kind of something I want to point out here, because you do need to focus on those obvious things sometimes. But I wanted to make this obvious for you. But enough with the obvious things. Let's focus a little bit more on the technical. Some of the things you're going to need are a virtual machine. And this is purely just separation between perhaps your main workstation that you work on, a work laptop, anything like that. And there are some great community VMs out there already created. One specifically called, if I get this right, Tsuguri and or Buscador. You're going to need a web browser, obviously. You need to capture this data online. But my favorite specifically is Firefox, because Firefox released this handy little feature not too long ago called Firefox Containers. And it's really handy in separating out data capturing, cookies don't transfer between sessions, and even having separate online profiles all in one window is really handy. Some sort of cell editor, so you can use Excel, LibreCalc, Google Sheets, whatever works for you. But this is less about note-taking and more about correlation. You're going to need to mind map this. You can do this in your head, but there are tools out there that really help with this. And this is really where the magic happens, because once you have a clear view of the subject, once you've correlated it, you can really map this out and start creating connections between them. And finally, a handful of newly created online profiles and emails. This next part, I wanted to give a trigger warning here. This does focus specifically on missing people. So if you have been affected by this in the past or recently, whatever it is, please tune out. This could affect you again. So just a little warning there. So this is the good side of it, really. Although they're missing, there is good that can come from this. So I wanted to focus on a bit of a hard lesson I learned when I first started doing this. I focused on a particular subject first because they were young. So when the competition first started, you had options. You had about 8 to 10 missing people subjects to choose from. And specifically, I picked this particular person because they were young. And at the time they went missing, they were around 18 and 19. And the reason I picked them is because you'd have this expectation that based on their age, they'd have some sort of online presence. The other reason I picked them is because they are from my hometown. And this is an important point because they're close. This is real. There could be mutual connections. And this is truly something I could help with. The next point here is their families shared as much information as they could. There was photos of their last known location, clothes they were wearing, schools they attended, friends they knew, photos of the whole family together, And it really just points out that every little detail that they provided is extremely important in the circumstance. So I get started. First thing I do is I Google the name. And there's plenty of news articles that arrive on my search. The family's posting information of the missing member. There's Facebook pages and tributes to them, online communities, photos of them, the National Missing Persons site listing them as well. And this is all critical pieces of information because each one of these is a source of information to build on. And this is a great start. There's a lot of detail to get started with. But taking a deeper dive, you need to start reading these news articles for any personable traits that uniquely identifies them. Any hobbies that they may have mentioned throughout the news articles. What was their favorite food? What did they eat? What schools did they attend? And what was their personal appearance and description? How tall were they? What was their hair color? What was the last thing they were wearing before they went missing? So this is some really rich information to lead on, but nothing specifically that's the subject at this point. And nothing that they've posted online or they haven't posted any online activity anywhere or anything like that I can really sort of start focusing on them with. So naturally, I would head over to Facebook and continue my search there because Facebook, everybody's on Facebook. And this is where it really starts to count because there's some real personal connections I can build on in here. So Facebook has this really handy feature that can convert your page in your browser to a mobile-friendly format. And all you need to do is add an M to the subdomain just here. Actually, I've got a little pointer. So there's a little M on my webpage just there, and that will convert this whole page into a mobile-friendly format. It's not quite plain text, but it's pretty close to it. Here you can copy out the HTML text just by selecting it, dumping it into some sort of notepad. Here I have VS Code to set the example. That really just strips away any rich text data that comes along with it. And then you can dump it in an Excel workbook. And this is where you can start filtering out any of the junk data that may be in there. So you've got moderator here, what they might be. And this is sort of just data I pulled off the Canberra notice board on Facebook. So at this point, I really start generating a detailed view of the subject, the friends and family, and I could start focusing on expanding my searches into those subjects. But the problem and the lesson I learned here is that I didn't start expanding, and I spent so much time focusing on them that I just didn't really find anything on them. And I'm frustrated about this because I couldn't find their email. I couldn't find an online identity. I couldn't find anything that I could start focusing on them with. And this is a bit of a mistake that you should probably learn from this because you do need to expand your searches. It's a good idea to look at the relations and find the correlations about them and things that they are connected to, so you can start building a profile around them instead. But when I finally put down those blinders and started looking around, and this is where I really started discovering more information on the subject and started building a bit more of a personality based on this information. And at that moment, I expanded my vision. I browsed friend correlations, found photos of the gatherings, photos of when they were children, hobbies and interests. And it's at that moment of discovering their hobbies, I begin to think the what if. What if they really just started walking around and got lost? How far could they theoretically go? And what if they got caught up with the wrong group? What if they were abducted? And what if really they just don't want to be found? And this is sort of a point here I make that sometimes you just need to accept some of these facts, that there just isn't enough information online anymore to keep tracing them. Second subject here, at least I learned from my mistakes here, and I started utilizing my tool sets online a bit more. The next subject I decided to focus on was, again, young, and they'd only been missing for 6 months prior to this competition. So again, I started with the basics I used previously, but this time I learned that they're a backpacker. And at this point, this can make it a bit more challenging because there's a high chance of the sources relating to the subject that they could be in a different language. They could be using a different social media tool. The photos of the subject are likely going to be in places I've never seen before. At this point, I really need to start focusing on a process of elimination so I can discover things outside of news articles and journalism. So at this point, I could start focusing on advanced Googling. So I make a little point here for KISS. If nobody knows what KISS means, it's keep it simple, stupid. And we'll get to that point in a second. So the most common advanced Googling I found myself using at this point was using common operators, pluses, minuses, and the cite function. Pretty self-explanatory. The plus will include a keyword, the minus will take away this keyword, and the cite function will look specifically on a site or sites that you put in. But in this example, I didn't keep it simple enough. I'm looking for myself here. And as I was sort of practicing this, apparently there's a farming company out there. There's a Leslie Benzies. I think he helped create Grand Theft Auto. There's a Robert Benzies, apparently. I even sort of tried to find out if there's any file types of me online, and even specified my location. But somehow I ended up being in the Research Alliance for Children and Youth, and I don't know how that happened. It's at this point you learn another lesson that to someone you may look a lot like this, but it can feel a lot like this in the end. It can feel slow and laborious, really, just to find anything meaningful. A quick look though, the most useful search terms I found effective were what I mentioned before. You want to focus on a keyword here. So that can be the full name or username. And then again, to start narrowing down where you want to look. So using the cite function here. And you can see here that we found the schedule for myself here for today. And that was pretty simple. And that's using that KISS method right there. And another one here, this is just me doing a bit of practice again. This is me finding myself on either Facebook or Instagram. It turns out I've set the privacy settings quite good on Facebook for now. But Instagram, I probably need to make some improvements on. Once I started focusing my searches and keeping it simple, I actually found this person's online profile. And at this point, I could find postings of their secondhand bike parts that they no longer needed, their current partner. I've blurred most of these out because I want to protect their identity as much as possible. More photos showing their build, different haircuts, smiling and not, to give me an idea of their different views and different profiles, what country and town they're from, where they were visiting. So we can see here they visited Melbourne, Victoria, and one of the last posts they made before they went missing. This is really key detail to start mind mapping them. But I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. I didn't want to start focusing on them. I wanted to expand my sources and begin looking for more connections around them. But you know what? At this point, it wasn't as important this time, because when they went missing, they weren't in a country where they had a lot of connections. So the last couple of options I had was to start tracing out any routes that were mentioned in news articles, any paths it could have been down, and to focus on this, I used Google Maps. So sure enough, online details were provided by the news sites, some of the hostels they stayed at, any CCTV footage that was available at the time, and their last known physical location and last known phone location. So you can see here a path that was traced out already for me that I found online. And again, this is really key detail in finding missing people, because you really want to help. You really want to do what you can for these people. But there comes a point where you can no longer collect any more data on them. You reported everything you can, you've mapped out everything you know about them, and you start to question why they went missing. And sometimes people really just do go missing with the intention of going missing. I want to leave it there for now. I could talk about missing people for the entire presentation, but I do want to leave you feeling with a little bit of despair there, feeling as if it's unfinished, because this is a bit of another lesson there. You might not always find an answer, and sometimes you do just need to accept that that is just the way it is. So just letting everybody know who may have tuned out that it's safe again to come back. There's no more missing people talk, but we will go into another trigger space. This is the next part is focusing on a real life situation where somebody was stalked. So if you've been affected by this, please tune out. And again, reach out to any community members, any mental health services to help you out with any of these complex emotions. So I've covered off what you as a community could do to help with some of these real life challenges, but now I wanted to focus on some of the case studies I've blended in here. What does this information show us? This is the focusing on the bad side of OSINT. What information can you post online, and how can it be used against us? What small details could you focus on to reveal a bigger picture? And what does releasing information at a time of year, how does that reveal the truth of your location, of your identity? And to focus on these next parts isn't necessarily about tooling, but rather the process in which you can go down to find new sources, to identify new information, and just to think a little bit outside the box. Like, sharing information about yourself is great if someone ever needed to find you, but maybe you enjoy sharing information so that somebody will find you. However you want to view this, I just want to make sure that you second guess each update you make online. You think about the work you share, and just to help you realize just how powerful you are as a source of intelligence. So this case study, I call it a great selfie with a sinister sight. Again, trigger warning, this is a real life scenario. This is reported on the media and all the news outlets. So if you wanted to use this detail in the presentation I give you to go look for it later, you're welcome to. But anyway, who doesn't love a selfie? You know, I love a selfie. In fact, I love selfies so much. A few years ago, I bought myself a selfie stick before they were banned. Lucky for me, the selfies at the time I took were of a time of low resolution cameras, even where the EXIF data was still attached. And there was a mention of EXIF data yesterday in the Slack channel. So make sure you pay attention to that sort of stuff. But this case study focuses on the small details over a period of time. So the situation is a pop star idol enjoys posting photos of herself and posting them for all of her fans to see. She'll take photos of her gorgeous house and how lucky she is, cosplay outfits, her pets, meeting the fans, on her way to and from events, and the list just goes on. And of course, I hope at this point you'd be thinking, why would anyone want to post this much information? And at this point, it's a little bit like watching a horror movie, asking the same questions. You know, don't go down that creepy hallway. Don't investigate that creepy basement. Don't follow the trail of blood into the woods. Come on, seriously. And right now, the analogy is much the same. From a victim's perspective, it seems innocent and fun, and that you're just sharing your love of life and want everyone to know about it. But from a predator's point of view, this is everything they need to know to hunt you down and lure you into their trap. So let's go down the hallway and find postings of cosplay pictures, how it first creates attention. Of course, no dissing here. Please don't be discouraged from things that you enjoy doing. Let's discover those cute outfits and hashtags that rapidly reach out to thousands of supportive fans that all share that content for more people to discover too. And hey, why don't we look down into that creepy basement full of photos of them getting ready in front of their curtains with the sun beaming a perfect ray of light to create the perfect lighting condition for your camera. You don't want any bad selfies for your fans. We do really want to see the details. And finally, let's follow the trail of blood into the deep dark woods of post-aftermath cosplay events. Let your fans know just how much you appreciate them coming along and supporting you. Take a selfie to show your gratitude to and from your event and on your way home. And while you rest up for another exciting new day, let your fans know. Submit a few hashtags and let them know you're going to be there tomorrow. Really, this is a horror story that doesn't end in murder, but it really ends in someone learning a hard lesson about what information you post online. Before I get more into the detail of this particular use case, I wanted to take a quick moment to focus briefly on why lighting and shadow can play a really important part of a picture. And as user NRG 8000 on Twitter points out for us, the world is full of little sundials. The Twitter account does go into detail to get this particular point across, but I wanted to keep it short for today because I am limited on time here. But they used a couple of images sourced from a video showing 300 to 400 detainees here. And the video showed in this particular example, the video showed a scale of the size, the orientation in EXIF data, well, which can also be found in EXIF data, a handy little shadow from the telegraph pole just here as well. And this is sort of the sundial that I mentioned before. But you can continue reading this particular case study on Twitter, and I'll share a link later for those of you who can't quite read that quickly enough here. But we can see here in all of his images, this really starts to start focusing and analyzing each particular point of information here, how he uses the orientation chart here to determine size and scale, why the sundial shadow here is important, determining where they are on Google Maps just based on this simple piece of information, and even determining what time of the year this all was. But each one of those horror tales I provided is just enough information for an attacker to notice her. And they noticed her enough that they fantasized about her. They became obsessive, and they began searching for her. And this isn't uncommon. This is a pretty typical thing of a fan. Just some go to more extreme than others. But those perfect selfies inside of a house, in front of those curtains, were a source of another detail for this predator. But the curtains weren't the only part of this tale. That ray of light provided detailed information on which angle the sun hit her room, which indicated which floor in her apartment she lived on. And finally, on the way home, that reflection from the day and show of gratitude also reflected the bus stop in her eyes. And this is where it gets pretty creepy. But that obsession, that detail, that constant feed of information, all of that predator back directly to her place where they would meet, greet, and subsequently be arrested for their actions. But it's this kind of detail that is key to a successful OSINT collection. You might feel a bit uneasy after learning this, but that's good. It is pretty creepy. But if I can help you protect you and your actions online, I'd say that's been a pretty successful talk. Again, we're going back into the safe space again. I'd like to welcome anyone back who may have tuned out. So you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, but how on earth can this get any worse? And really, it can get much worse. And the way to view this is in big data. All that manual work and all that single subject focus is just not enough for some of these more advanced topics. And a lot of people are under a lot of pressure these days to perform highly and perform a lot of work because there are sales targets to meet. There are advertising demands. There's elections coming up. And there's also companies to take down in hostile actions. And as much as I can go into detail about all of these points, I really just want to focus on something I realized a while ago while building a project for myself. How can OSINT data affect the community like this and cause such a disturbance amongst the peace? So a little while ago, I mentioned a trend on Twitter, and this specifically relates to the stock market. People were really talking about this. The market was on a rise. People were excited. They would all spam their Twitter feed with dollar stock symbols and hashtags to promote their choices. And people would react to these posts. They would react in an emotional way. But to see the extent of this emotional response, I needed a way to view these tweets at scale and at speed faster than I could read. So I set up a little home lab here. It's pretty simple in terms of setup. I know a lot of you have shown some pretty complex home lab environments, but this is just a basic Docker container effectively. So to get started, I created a new Twitter account. Through that Twitter account, I had to enable developer mode, create some API keys. I set up a trial Splunk instance here. You can use Elk as another option or any other big data tool that you might like. I installed the API app to get the connections between Twitter and Splunk working. And this little tool here called the Natural Language Processing App, or NLP Text Analytics. At this point, all I needed to do was to start capturing data. And really, once I did, there was a lot of data. There was, the basics, date and time, their name, the username, the tweets, and how many follows they had. And this is some really rich information. And you probably normally find this on a target, but you're focusing on a target specifically. At this point, we want to focus on rapidly gaining this data and making sort of stats and trends out of this. And we really need to capture this information en masse. So I hope at this point you can start seeing how ugly this can start getting with OSINT, because this is exactly the sort of information that can affect the community as a whole and decisions they make. I get a little, sorry, I think I've talked ahead of myself, but here I wanted to point out the data that I could capture in Splunk, and although it's a little bit of a mess, you can go through some data engineering to make a bit more sense of this. And you can see here all the field extractions that I could capture on just one single event of a tweet. And here is the API documentation that Twitter actually talks about, where you can get detailed information about what you can capture and how much you can capture at a time before you need to start paying for it. So here's the slide I should have been up to by now, but this is how OSINT can affect a community. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the conspiracy theories about how Trump was elected, and how Russia was involved in affecting community choices on Facebook. But has anybody watched the Netflix documentary about Cambridge Analytica? It was called The Great Hack. And the whole business model was to capture data en masse as well, and to sell their services back to the highest bidder. I encourage you to watch this if you haven't, because it talks a lot of detail. It talks a lot about this free data in detail, and how they delivered it back to the community. But another thing to think about is how is this data actually generated? And really, it's pretty simple. You know, it's the things that you visit online, it's the things you like, the quizzes that you think are fun. You know, I've seen a lot of things online at the moment where people are posting the color of their image in their photo stream, and even just quizzes to get through the current crisis we're in. Games that you agree to terms and conditions on, all of this data you're providing for free to these organizations. And like many of you have probably heard, if something's for free, you're effectively the product. It's just something to keep in mind there. So how do we deliver this data? Well, I'm not going to go into detail about how Cambridge Analytica delivered this data, but I'm just going to focus on how I deliver this data to my Twitter feed. So first of all, I had to create a Splunk search. I've blurred this out because I would consider it my intellectual property at this point. I'd spent a lot of time creating these searches. But I need to not only build the search, but I need to build a custom Python application that would interface with the Twitter API. I needed the natural language processing app, as well as the machine learning toolkit as well. And so keeping this as a safe search, I could effectively create a bot to my Twitter account. And these searches would feed directly into my Twitter feed, and they would reach, eventually what I got was 100, 600, 700 followers. But they would reach the hundreds of followers I had on Twitter. And this is all scheduled too. So I could automate this and influence people before the stock market opened and even before it closed. And this is powered entirely from the conversations that these people were tweeting, and even the people attempting to influence the stock market choices. And it's the same sort of approach that these large media social platforms will take to influence you, your family, and your friends daily. And this is what really makes it ugly. So you can see here, this is my bot Twitter account. It's focusing on particular industries and how positive the conversations were on Twitter the previous day or on the particular day, and even sort of focusing on top stocks that were mentioned throughout the day as well. This isn't anything specific to price or trading value. This is just conversations. But look, the takeaway I want you all to take from that is not really to fear being online, but more to respect just how powerful this information is. If you're feeling concerned about any of this, please take some time to look at your privacy settings on your social media. Now for the finale, I wanted to introduce you all to a little game I created called OSINT. I started this not long ago. Oops, getting ahead of myself. So to keep it brief, when TSS merged with CyberCX, a group of us started a channel specifically for OSINT. One of the guys started posting selfies and challenged us all to find out where he was on Google Maps. And it turns out the people who get involved in this are insanely good. But of course, me and my ways, I always have to do more. So I spoke with Kirk briefly about taking this to the next level and getting the community involved so we could all start learning and getting involved. And so we started OSINT. So incentive is a play on words because there is an incentive to seek out a physical flag, which Ian previously mentioned. But you need to seek this flag out with the information only the information that you're given, and really the simplest piece of information is a selfie. The game is simple, and there are varying levels of difficulty. It is a little bit like geocaching, but without the actual GPS coordinates. So make sure when you're taking those selfies, you be careful of the EXIF data you provide. Once you found the flag, you can claim it, you can take it away with you and find a new location. Take a photo and post it online. Post it on Twitter, mostly. That's been the best platform I found to share this. And it has been the best platform to enable this as well. So the hashtags we've been using are OSINT, and CTF, and I've got another little one here called CBR just to sort of narrow down the location for people. And here I've also specified some simple rules as well to get engaged. So we have here the green flag. It is the easiest find. It needs to be in places that aren't too obscure, and at least some sort of clue to help track it down easily. And we've had some really good people get involved in this already, and I've really found it fantastic because they've put it in some really good spots where you probably wouldn't normally go. So it really gets you out and exploring Canberra in that sense, or whichever town you're from. So again, thank you to those community members for getting involved. The moderate or the yellow flags, this is a bit of a leap from green. There needs to be at least one technical challenge here, I've decided, and the photos of the flag in its location with a clue hidden somewhere in the technical aspect. The red flags are extreme. I haven't quite decided what needs to happen here yet, but I wouldn't mind some input. But effectively, get creative. Make it hard. Hide some code words in pictures. Hide code words in audio files. It doesn't really matter. It needs to be as close to Spycraft as anything you can get. So I'm still developing on these ideas. But if you've got an idea, please share it. And the white flags, these I'm hoping are to be more permanent flags with a QR code attached to them. So once you find it, you can scan the QR code and it will record on my website, which is currently hosted on GitHub, how many times it's been found. So at the moment, that's still in development, but I'm all ears to any community involvement. So I do have a list of development plans I need to get through, but I appreciate your help. This is a community game, so you don't need me to get started in this. You just need an idea and this framework. Before I finish up, the green flag was posted yesterday, but it's been found again, unfortunately. So thank you, Kirk, for doing that. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and give him a like. And finally, the moderate flag has actually been released now as well. All the clues you need is everything in my presentation. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I know that there's been a lot of interest in some of the, the group chats that you and I are in about this and trying to find some of the flags. And I think it's really important. It brings up a theme, I think, your presentation about the dual use of certain technologies. So we talk about, OSINT for good and OSINT for, let's say, bad. Let's not say evil per se, but, as cyber professionals, it's something we deal with on a regular basis, that you have, let's say, PowerShell, which is for good, but can also be used for bad as well. And it really comes down to your intent in using those things. They're not, the tool themselves is not inherently bad or not inherently good. It is how you use that tool and how you take precautions as you use that tool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for articulating that probably a bit better than I could.
Oh, no, that's all right. So we're going to start getting ready for our next talk, which I know that, oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Ben, for your talk. It was absolutely amazing. I also liked the use of the trigger warning and trigger safe space spots. I think that's something we might do moving forward if we were to do this again, because that was a really good thing. And I can actually see some drops in the traffic around those times as well. So people did make use of them. So that's really good to do. No worries.